Hey YouTube, what's up? It's the Dirt Road with Mike and Rick. That's Mike over there.
And it's Rick over here.
And that's our Dirt Road right back there. That's our farm over here in the outer boroughs of New York City. Beautiful farm you got here, Mike.
Oh, it is. It's very beautiful.
I love that. But how many acres you got?
However much covers the back wall right there.
You know, here on the Dirt Road, we're trying to get some intelligent conversation going here. We do disagree sometimes, but
Yep.
we were just talking before we went on camera here about just how bad the level of conversation and discourse has gotten in America, to the point where everything is about fear. You know, and the greatest president we ever had, Mike, Franklin D. Roosevelt, said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and that's a profound line. He did, by the way, lift that off of Thoreau, but
He did lift off Thoreau,
but-
and he did some great things. He did. I can't disagree. The man has a hell of a legacy.
but that line was just such a positive line, because that really is the thing that you need to be afraid of the most, is being afraid, right?
100%.
Being afraid,
Fear is the enemy.
you were
Fear's
in
a liar.
combat, right?
Yeah.
If you're in combat and you're just scared,
You're gonna die.
Yeah, and
You're
not
gonna
that-
get somebody else dead.
right? And I mean, of course, I'm sure you're scared to any level. You're a human being, but if that fear drives your decision making, you're gonna be dead.
So one of the greatest things I probably ever heard is courage is contagious, right? So for me, it wasn't about being afraid so much, because I mean, obviously you're afraid. You're always afraid. That's just one of those things. But you put that aside because you're not thinking about, okay, I'm afraid for me. What I spent my time thinking about is, okay, these are my Marines, and my job is to make sure that I put Humpty back together again, and I get everybody home in one piece as much as possible. So I focused in on my mission, I focused in on my task, I focused in on what I was doing, and that was all I did. And that's kind of what you do. And you know, courage is oftentimes no more than that. It's just, you just don't think about what it is, how dangerous it is or what could happen. You just think about, what do I need to do right now to resolve this situation. So as a cop, as a combatant in military, whatever the case might be, that's more often than not what courage really is. You know, and you see it. You know, on Iwo Jima, uncommon valor was common amongst all men, right? Something along those lines. I forget the quote exactly, but you get the idea. But that, to me, that was my reality for a very, very
Sure.
long portion of my
But
life.
you have to measure it, right? I mean, because there's a fine line between courage and stupidity.
Well, you
Running into a burning building to save a baby is courage. Running into a burning building to see what it feels like is stupidity, right? Same action. And it's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing with fear. And when we have a dialogue in America, and our whole media ecosystem is just based on fear, getting everybody scared.
Sure.
Your way of life is coming to an end.
There's a term
so
for it.
Tune in tomorrow to find out if it's still coming to an end.
Tune in next week to find out what we think about that. No,
Yeah.
no. So it's fear porn, right? There's actually a name for this out there floating around the internet. You know, it's called fear porn, right? And that's exactly what that is. It's this ability of people to control the masses by fear. You know, if you go back in history to World War II, you know, and pre-World War II Germany, Goebbels, you know, understood this implicitly. The best way to control the masses is through fear. And that's exactly what the Nazis did. They used fear to instill this need for the government in the people, so that they could take even more control, until eventually you got what you got, which was this completely out of control, psychotic regime that was murdering people at a scale never seen before.
Well, but it doesn't have to just be a Nazi regime. I mean, listen, American politics has been based on that. The whole Cold War was based, fear of the Russians. The Russians
Yeah,
are coming.
remember being a
communism's
kid?
coming.
Remember the movies when you were a kid, the nuclear war movies?
Yeah,
when we were kids?
forget the movies. We used to have the drills, the shelter
The drills in
where we had
school,
to go
get
down
under
to
your
the-
desk.
We had to
Yeah.
go down to the basement with the little orange triangles
Yeah,
or
yeah,
yellow
yeah, or the
triangle
hallways,
signs.
whatever.
Get away from the flying glass. And I'm not saying that we were never in danger of the Russians hitting us. Of course we were.
Sure.
Same thing with terrorism. There's a danger there, but for the government to take that fear and play it up the way they did. But it's the news media that really bothers me, because governments, like you said, I mean, have been doing this from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
But the news media now, because they have to grab that small group now, right? There's no. We were just talking before about how Tucker Carlson was one of the biggest newscasters out there, and he got about 3 to 4 million viewers a night.
Right.
Cronkite would have been fired.
Yep.
If he ever had a 3 million viewer night, he would have been gone, and so would Tom Brokaw and so forth. But now the news media, they have to find that niche,
Sure.
right? And they have to hold on to it, and that's who they speak to. So we don't really get real news, between the government classifying everything from what the president eats at night to things that are real. Everything is classified. The news also, every news media outlet, they're a niche organization. So even the New York Times, which was such a great, it was always a little left leaning, but it was such a great newspaper. Right? This is a newspaper that published the Pentagon Papers, right? Was it them or the Washington Post? I don't remember now. I think it was
I
them.
believe it was them. It was them. Pentagon Papers was them.
Right, because it led to the Supreme Court decision.
Yes. And it was them.
So, but now it's just all about fear. So be afraid of this. So with Biden, we were talking about how he's telling everybody, be afraid of Trump. He's going to be a dictator. He's not going to be a fucking dictator. No. You know, if you really think he's going to be a dictator, then you just don't think very much of our American system, which was built to make sure that we don't have that. Unless there's a military coup that takes out the Constitution, that's not going to happen.
No, you're not going to have a Trump dictator. I don't think that's even remotely possible, realistically.
No.
And beyond that, what we were talking about earlier, so things shifted, right? Our media shifted, our country shifted, the divisiveness became very, very pronounced. And
because
very
it
real.
sells.
Because it sells.
Yeah.
And what happens is you have, as we were talking about earlier, the rise of the internet in the 90s, right? So the internet comes in the 90s, it starts to rise. Now you have this tremendous amount of information available to you all over the place from different sources. But at the same time, or just before that, really, you have the rise of cable television and the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah, in the same decade.
Right, in the same decade, more or less. So now, with those two things combined, what happens is you kind of break up that Cronkite hold that they had on media, right? So now it's no longer about just ABC or NBC or whatever, one of the 3 or 4 stations you had to choose from news. Now you have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of websites or, hundreds of different, news channels you can go to.
Which does what, Mike? That makes everything seem more important than it really is.
And it segments the population, and really now they have to fight for it.
There's not enough news out there to have 24 hours of news. When we used to have the nightly news at 6:30, it was a half an hour.
Yeah, and they broke down the key points. Yeah.
Now, this was through Watergate, through the Vietnam War, through really, really important things. And somehow Americans were still able to get all the national news they needed in that half hour. And then I think Nightline came along when the Iranian hostage thing was going on.
Right.
So it expanded it a little bit. But you got your local news. And, that's where you found out about the murders going on in your city or, the corruption or whatever it was. And it just seems that when we had less information, we were a much more intelligent society than now when we have all the information literally in the world in our pocket with our phone.
Well, yeah, you have a walking supercomputer in your pocket at all times, right? You could literally look up and verify just about anything you want, except you have companies like Google that and they admittedly do this. They steer the information the way they want it, So look at the 2016 campaign with Trump and Hillary. Google got caught, and they admitted to steering people towards Hillary in that election. That's wrong. They have a responsibility to the public. But then again, I don't blame Google so much as I do our media establishment that really set that tone in the 90s. And that's where it really started, with them trying to shift those things because they needed to capture more of that share. And they were losing traction, right? Because if you take this population of, say 50 million people, right? And they watch the nightly news, and it's broken up between 4 stations, and each one gets about 25 million people. Right, and that's a kind of a steady stream of ad revenue for that business, that company. That's the ceiling for them, right? They kind of limit themselves. Maybe they pull off 1 or 2 from here or there, but really it doesn't change much. Then you introduce the internet and you introduce 24-hour news cycle into that, and now you've got all these pundits on there, with the doom and gloom, and the world's going to freeze tomorrow, the world's going to bake in the sun tomorrow, global warming, global cooling. They have to get
something to get you mad. We were just talking off camera before we started rolling this. We talk about Biden's pulling out, and when he put out his resignation letter or whatever you would call it,
his campaign speech.
There was
the final Dark
no,
Brandon
not the speech, the actual letter that he wrote, the note. There was some kind of an uproar on the internet over the fact that he didn't use White House letterhead.
He used his own personal letterhead.
And who the fuck cares, right? And who the fuck cares? What did I say?
Biggest non-issue ever.
I don't care if he used Hello Kitty stationery,
which I think would be epic.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome. I think Kamala might do that.
Kamala just might.
But who the fuck cares about things like that? But the news media or the social media websites have to make that a big deal. Now, if you think about it, maybe, I don't know this, but maybe there's some sort of campaign finance law, that says that if he's doing something about his campaign, which he was doing, maybe he's not allowed to use White House.
Yeah, so if you're...
Who knows, but who the fuck cares, Mike?
Well, if you're an elected official, right, and you're in a seat, so you're a congressman, okay, and you're up for re-election, you cannot use any resources or staff from your congressional seat to do any campaigning at all.
So
you
we
have
just
to have separate staffs.
So
for
then
those.
we just solve stationary gate.
That's
See?
it.
That's it. And that's
it.
what good discussion
It's
can
just
do.
that simple.
But my point is that they have to put people into an uproar over something.
Sure.
And there's just not enough real stuff out there to get mad at. And the irony is that the things that we should be getting mad at,
Oh yeah.
you know, they make sure, like you said in another video, you know, they hang the shiny object in front of you. Oh, he's using
Yeah,
the
look
wrong
over here.
stationary.
Yeah.
Look, he's using personal stationary. Don't look over there where World War III's about to fucking go on.
Yeah.
Look at this stationary this prick used. He used the wrong stationary.
Oh, Trump's a dictator, but don't look at this 8.6 billion in counting that's missing from the Pentagon's budget. You know,
Right.
don't do that.
So this has got nothing to do with, you know, both sides or this side or that side. This is just the landscape that we're in, and what it's led to is the inability of a lot of smart people to do what we're doing here and just have a conversation. I mean, listen, we disagreed vociferously on a few things in that last video,
Sure.
but I bet you people might not even realize we were disagreeing.
Absolutely, probably wouldn't.
You know, and I'm not trying to raise ourselves above other people. I'm saying that's our goal here on the dirt road, is just to try to have some kind of an intelligent conversation and show that you can disagree. Mike, it is
Absolutely.
a terrible time in our society when families are banning political conversation from the dinner table.
100%.
The dinner table is where some of the best political conversation should go on.
Of course.
And the reason why I think it's such a bad thing is because the people who love you the most in this world are your family.
Sure.
The people who know that you're not a racist. They know you're not a bad person. They know you're not in favor of terrorism. They know you're not a communist. They know you're not a fascist. These are the people who know that about you and should be the ones who get to hear you talk. Because when, you know, if you hear somebody that you love very much disagreeing with you, you're not going to put them into that box of bad person, right? Because this is somebody that you love. But it's very easy on the internet when you hear somebody say something you disagree with to just put them in that box and say, this is a terrible human being.
I have a real life example of that. Actually, a couple of real life examples of that. So during my campaign, ran for Congress, primary, all that. Ran as a conservative Republican. You know, no different than how I promote myself before or after. And I have friends though that are not. I have, you know, friend Diane. She's married to a woman. She's gay. Amazing woman, amazing wife.
Mike,
I
you
love
just
them to
outed
death.
somebody on the internet here.
Well, no, Diane knows. I mean, she's out anyway. Trust me. That's no secret. But she's phenomenal. Her wife is phenomenal. They're just wonderful people. And they were supportive. Even though they're very much on the left side of things, Democrat side of things, they were still very supportive because they know me.
Right, that's my point.
And they know me. And they know how I am. And they know that at the end of the day, kindness and generosity, those things are most important to me than I would just want to problem solve and help.
And that's my point. And that's why now that we don't get to have those conversations anymore, and it's not just in family, it's everything is so fragmented in life. There was a good book that came out a long time ago, I'm going to say back in the 80s, maybe in the 90s, by a sociologist named Robert Putnam. It's called Bowling Alone. And he almost predicted this stuff back then. The decline of things like bowling leagues, hence the title. He was using that as one example. When we had things like bowling leagues and Knights of Columbus and things that just drew you in with other neighborhood people, right?
Yeah.
You weren't just getting together based on your political point of view like people do on the internet, because you could search out your groups now. You couldn't choose to have an all-Republican bowling team. You couldn't choose to have an all-Democrat bowling team. So he called this social capital, but the point is that back then, before we had the whole world open to us on the internet, your friends were your friends, right? Your neighborhood was your neighborhood. And you always heard people with different points of view. Quick story, back in '88, when Bush was running against Dukakis, I was still working in my local neighborhood. I worked in a pizzeria for a long time, worked there through high school and college, and stayed on a little bit afterwards. And right across the street was a video store. This tells you how long ago it was, where we went and rented video cassettes. And the store was owned by Greeks. And I was very friendly with them. I worked right across the street from them. My neighborhood was very Greek. And when Dukakis was running against Bush, obviously most of the people who were Greek in my neighborhood, very much for Dukakis. Oh my God, we used to have arguments all the time, but teasing type arguments, right? So remember that time in that campaign, Michael Dukakis was trying to show that he's not wimpy and he's all about the military. So he did a commercial where he's riding around in a tank. And he had the helmet on.
I remember that.
And he looked like the Great Gazoo from the Flintstones. And he had this big doof-ass smile on his face, right?
Well, if he's running a tank, I'll be a doofy smile too.
I cut that out of the newspaper. and I hung it right up behind the counter in the video store, right before all the Greeks from the neighborhood started coming in. And they would yell, take that down, take that down. So Louis, the owner, would come in, he'd tear it down. I had like 20 copies of it. Every time he would tear it down, I'd hang up another one. But this was all in good fun. You could tease each other.
Yeah, because you could do that.
The day after the election, when Bush ran, I walked in, the video store was crowded. I walked in and to say, how are you? Hello, how are you? In Greek is Tikanis. So I walked in and said, hey, Tikanis, everybody. How are you? How'd you like that election, huh? That was it. No fighting, no wanting to kill each other. No. Everybody knew it wasn't the end of the fucking world. My guy won, your guy lost. We teased each other. I'm sure they were worried about it, heard about it, whatever. But that was it. Mike, if you tried that now,
forget it.
My God, it would be a fucking brawl. Because, you know, when people...
There'd be marching on the video store or the pizzeria. There'd be protests.
When people say, I don't know anybody that voted for Donald Trump, or people say, I don't know anybody that voted for Joe Biden, they're not lying.
No.
They probably really, really don't.
No.
Because that's what we do now. We just
segment ourselves.
And I want to put in just one more book. I'm not a writer, so I'm not plugging anything. But there was another book by a guy named Bill Bishop in the same vein called The Great Sort. And this came out also probably about 15 years ago, and it was very prophetic. He said that people are tending now to move into areas where people think similarly to them. And it might not even be a conscious thing. And he proved it too, well, kind of proved it. I mean, he had data behind it, where he showed neighborhoods and how they vote. And that at some point in the past, I got to make up a number because I really don't remember it, but let's say at some point 25 years ago, this particular neighborhood would have been 60% Republican, 40% Democrat. And now, 25 years later, it's 96% Republican, 4% Democrat, something like that. And then neighborhoods are literally sorting themselves into political blocks. And all this is doing is making us more intense about our beliefs, right? Because let's say you have a fight with your wife.
Yeah.
And I sit here and I tell you how right you are. And I keep telling you how right you are. And you need to do something about this. Right. She's wrong. She has no right to treat you like this. You shouldn't put up with this. What's going to happen to you? You're going to get angrier and angrier and angrier, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody else was sitting there and saying, Mike, maybe you're taking this a little too far. It really wasn't that bad. And you're hearing differing points of views, it makes you think. And we just, with all the access to information we have now, we just don't have access. Well, we have access. We just don't choose to use the access to any opposing.
No, because people selectively, they selectively process their information now. They selectively search their information now,
and they see confirmation bias.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at like Fox News, right? So for people on the left, Fox News is like the right wing site, right? But the funny thing is, if you go to like X or anywhere where you see like Truth Social, for instance, would be a great example. You go there and you search out Fox, and what you'll see is a lot of people boycotting Fox or people bad-mouthing Fox
saying
on the
it's
right.
Too liberal, right?
Right, saying it's liberal and that they take a liberal point of view, whatever. And it's not so much a function of the fact that Trump is so far right, because in reality he really is a centrist. If you look at his policy, it's very centrist. But it's the fact that he's been painted as this far-right figure for so long that now all these people in that camp have come to almost adopt that far-right moniker and act in that manner. But I think it comes back to, like I said, I think people have, for decades now, since really the 90s, have segmented themselves so harshly because you have all these disparity of media stations to choose from and all these different things competing for your attention that have gotten more and more salacious as the years go on. They've gotten more and more...
And that makes us angrier and angrier and angrier.
Exactly. So we've almost kind of, as a culture, brainwashed ourselves into these little segmented pieces of population to where now you see like this trans craziness where every group has to be even more subdivided. It's not enough now to be trans. You have to be a trans, zoophobic, whatever, crazy. I don't know what the hell the nomenclature is for any of this crap anymore. I'm not going to lie to you. The alphabet mafia crap, all right? Look, I don't care. Honestly, I just don't care. Don't dance in front of kids provocatively. Keep pouring out of schools. Live your damn life.
But doesn't it make you wonder, based on what we were just saying, is it really as ubiquitous as maybe the sites we're looking at make it out to be? Like,
probably not. No, it's probably very, very limited. So I think that I think having it anywhere or access to it anywhere like that would make it wrong. But I do believe that the fact that one site or another, say like MSNBC airs an episode about, oh look, the school's using these these very graphic books to teach kindergartners about, the LGBTQ whatever community, right? And if it's graphic depictions of gay sex or whatever being shown to kindergartners, that's a bad thing,
Of course
right?
it is.
But let's say they do that, and just for example, right, they show this, and then a year later now they come back to follow up on that story, and now instead of one school, other schools saw that and said, oh, that's the way things are going, okay, that's what we're going to do now. And it takes hold, and it grows.
Yes, it does. But
and I think that's what's been happening over the the last few years or actually the last couple of decades is, but on both sides, you know.
On all.
So the outrage from the right has grown exponentially as the embrace of it from the left has grown. And and there's these contrived controversies is what I'm trying to say.
Because that's the only way that these media companies can survive now. Because
Yeah.
like we were talking about before, right? What did we just say? Cronkite would have been fired if he had anywhere near the numbers Tucker Carlson has.
Right.
And Tucker Carlson's considered the king of that media, right? Because
Yeah.
he's getting more people. So you have to hold on to that group. And the way to do it is to get them as angry as possible and as concerned as possible, worried as possible. Tell them over and over again they're right, and that builds the anger and it builds the hatred. Look, I don't really think that's what Americans want.
Not at all.
And
No, not remotely.
I don't have anything other than this anecdotal evidence. The most popular podcaster in the world is Joe Rogan.
Well, he just got passed by Tucker, but that's true.
He
He's
didn't
still
get
popular.
passed by Tucker. He got passed by Tucker for one day.
Passed by Tucker.
He didn't get passed by Tucker. Joe Rogan has more subscribers to his podcast than anybody.
He does.
It's not even close.
The guy's phenomenal, and his show
It's
is
not
great.
even-
His show is awesome.
But the question is why? Because he has a 3-hour conversation.
It's
All right?
real.
All of these, the news media now, they love to take any one line he says about politics and claim that he's a right winger or a left
A
winger.
left winger or whatever.
If you
yeah.
listen to Joe Rogan, he has a 3-hour conversation, and in that 3 hours, if 5 minutes is dedicated to politics, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Unless the guest he has on is an
As
actual political pundit or
political
something
somebody,
like that.
yeah.
So what is it? It's just a normal conversation. He's curious. He wants to know. He asks his guests, "What do you think?" They talk, and people listen to this. That I think is the positive way to go. But it seems that he's the only one who wants to go in that direction.
No, he's the only one who's done it and actually made it work because the other ones are so committed to whatever. So I think most people, right, they don't really know how to think outside the box, right? Most people follow the cart tracks that are already in front of them, And even smart people, they just follow the tracks that are in front of them. It takes a lot to
And most people are smart.
And they're very smart. But again, they're also trained, right, by society. Society trains you in a certain way. What's okay, what's not okay. Like you get that training from a child on up and you kind of follow the tracks. Everybody else is following because this is what you learn to do. And most people have a very hard time breaking out of that kind of mindset or that mold, and going in a different direction or going in a new direction. And trailblazers are these great things because they're just not common, right? That's what makes them, good because of the rarity. So Joe Rogan would be my definition of a trailblazer, somebody who stepped out on his own and said, wait a minute, I'm going to do something differently. And, it didn't start off overnight where he had bajillions of followers or whatever.
In fact, I think
It
I
was
told
him
you.
and Redman listening to music, smoking weed or something,
Exactly,
right?
with little bubbles going up behind him and everything.
Yeah.
You watch his first few episodes; they were horrible, but they were just having a good time, having fun. But eventually, he found his niche. But what
That's
I'm
just
saying
that you
is
find
that
your path.
I do believe that people want intelligent conversation if they're given that choice, if they're given that option. I think they'll take it.
Well, I think they have it now. Welcome to the dirt road.
Okay, so we're
The
closing
goal
out.
here is to bring out that conversation. So we don't care what side of the political aisle you see yourself as. We don't care what it is you espouse. That's your personal belief, philosophy, whatever. We're not going to fight you on it necessarily, but we want to hear it. We want to hear that disparity. We want to hear that differing viewpoint so that we can discuss it as adults. We can have an honest, real discussions. That's all we want. We want to move this thing forward in a way that kind of bridges the gaps between the segmented society we have today, right? We want to bring back civil discourse, which is the superstructure of this segmented island-like, culture we have, and bring it all back together again as Americans.
And that is our hope with this particular podcast. And
That's what
hopefully
we're
you
trying to
enjoy
do
it.
here, okay?
And we'll check you out on the next episode, I guess.
That's right. And Tucker beat Joe Rogan. Don't tell him.
It's just not true. I have nothing invested in it. It's just not true.
I love Tucker. I
Have a
think
good
he's
one.
awesome.
I do too. I have nothing against Tucker,
Yeah,
but
I
he
love
doesn't
Joe
have
Rogan too, though. I think he's
anywhere
great.
near the viewership that Rogan has.
Rogan's an awesome dude, though.
He is. He's a great guy.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Have a good day.
All right, folks. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Like, subscribe, follow, Rumble,
I wasn't
YouTube,
supposed to get up yet.
everywhere you get your podcasts.
Okay.
Ignore that guy.